2 pilots, 30 hours, a $2.2 billion stealth bomber cruising at 50,000 feet. No bed, no bathroom, no hot meals, just cold MRES, chemical toilets, and the mission brief for a precision strike 7,000 miles from home. This is the B-2 Spirit, the most advanced warplane ever built. It can deliver nuclear weapons to anywhere on Earth without being detected. But here's what the Air Force doesn't advertise: the human endurance challenge that turns every ultra-long-range mission into a survival test. October 7, 2001, 2 crew members departed Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, bound for Afghanistan. 44 hours later, they landed back on American soil, setting the record for the longest combat mission in aviation history. How do you survive that long in a cockpit the size of a minivan? And what happens when biology demands attention at 50,000 feet over enemy territory? The B-2 Spirit wasn't designed for comfort, it was designed to be invisible. Every curve, every surface, every material choice serves one purpose: defeating enemy radar. The cockpit, an afterthought squeezed into the remaining space after engineers prioritized stealth over everything else. 2 ejection seats, 3 feet apart. That's your entire workspace for missions that can exceed 30 hours. No standing room, no stretching, no walking to the back of the aircraft to clear your head. You're strapped into a seat that reclines 15 degrees maximum, surrounded by multi-function displays showing threat vectors, navigation data, weapons status, and fuel calculations that determine whether you're coming home. The mission profile is brutal by design. Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri to targets in Afghanistan. 7,000 miles one way. No forward operating bases, no friendly airspace for most of the journey. Just you, your mission commander, and enough fuel to make the round trip, if everything goes perfectly. The Air Force calls these missions Global Strike from CONUS. Crews call them endurance tests because the B-2's stealth capability is its greatest weapon and its biggest constraint. Conventional bombers can land overseas, refuel on the ground, swap crews, and continue operations. The B-2 can't risk exposure at foreign bases, where adversaries might photograph its radar-absorbent coating or analyze its exhaust signature. So the crew that takes off from Missouri must stay with the aircraft until it returns to Missouri. 30 hours minimum, sometimes longer. The record stands at 44.3 hours, set during Operation Enduring Freedom when geopolitical complications forced extended holding patterns before final weapons release authorization. Think about that. 44 consecutive hours responsible for a $2 billion aircraft carrying precision-guided munitions worth millions more. 44 hours where one mistake, one moment of inattention could compromise the mission or worse, reveal America's stealth technology to adversaries waiting for exactly that opportunity. The physical preparation starts weeks before the mission brief. Sleep schedule adjustments, dietary modifications, medical screening for conditions that might worsen during extended periods of immobility. Crews practice emergency procedures until muscle memory takes over, because at hour 28, your brain won't be processing information like it does during training. But here's what no amount of preparation truly prepares you for: the isolation. You and your mission commander occupy a pressurized bubble traveling 11 miles above Earth at 550 miles per hour. Radio silence for most of the mission. Communications might give away your position. No GPS waypoints over hostile territory. Celestial navigation and inertial guidance systems only. If something goes wrong, you're 12 hours from the nearest friendly runway. Ejection over the ocean means survival in a raft until rescue, if rescue can reach you before hypothermia sets in. The psychological weight is crushing. But here's the problem the Air Force discovered during the first ultra-long missions. Biology doesn't care about operational security. And when you're 12 hours into a mission over the Indian Ocean, your body starts making demands that billion-dollar stealth technology can't solve. Subscribe to see what happens when everything goes wrong at 50,000 feet. The food situation is worse than you think. Forget the myths about specialized astronaut meals or gourmet military rations designed for billion-dollar aircraft. B-2 crews eat the same MRES, meals ready to eat, that ground troops consume in desert combat zones. Cold, straight from the pouch. No heating, no preparation. Why? Physics and paranoia. Installing a galley or even a simple microwave adds weight that reduces range. Heating elements create thermal signatures that might compromise stealth. Hot food generates odors that could contaminate the cockpit's closed ventilation system for 30 hours. So the Air Force made a choice: mission capability over crew comfort. Each B-2 crew loads approximately 18 MRE pouches into cockpit storage compartments before departure. The math is simple but unforgiving. 3 meals per crew member for a 30-hour mission, plus emergency reserves if the mission extends. The menu is whatever supply provided that week: beef ravioli, chicken chunks, vegetarian pasta, chili with beans. Each pouch contains around 1,200 calories, barely enough for the physical and mental demands of flying combat operations. Because here's what civilians don't understand: piloting a B-2 isn't like driving a car on autopilot. Constant micro-adjustments to maintain stealth flight parameters, continuous monitoring of threat systems, mental calculations updating strike timing based on winds aloft, and political authorization delays. Your brain burns calories like a distance runner, even though you're sitting still. The typical B-2 crew consumes 3,000 to 4,000 calories during a 30-hour mission, meaning those 18 MRE pouches provide barely adequate nutrition, and that's assuming you can keep food down while managing motion sickness, stress, and the cabin pressure changes that mess with digestion. Then there's the water problem. Each crew member gets approximately 4 liters for the entire mission. Sounds like a lot until you factor in the dry cockpit air, the physical stress, and the body's hydration needs during extended operations. But here's the cruel calculation every B-2 pilot makes: more water means more bathroom visits. And the bathroom situation, we'll get to that. So crews deliberately dehydrate themselves, sipping water only when absolutely necessary, accepting the headaches, the reduced alertness, the increased error risk, because the alternative is worse. Energy bars and electrolyte powder packets supplement the MRES, caffeine pills for hour 20 and beyond, glucose tablets for quick energy when concentration starts failing. The irony is brutal. You're sitting in the most technologically advanced aircraft ever built, stealth coatings worth millions, avionics that can guide bombs within 3 feet of their target from 50,000 feet up, radar systems that detect enemy aircraft 200 miles away, and you're eating cold beef ravioli from a plastic pouch, trying not to drink too much water, calculating whether you can make it another 6 hours before addressing biological needs. A mission commander described it perfectly: "We fly a spaceship and eat like we're camping in a war zone." But that's just the food problem, because 8 hours after consuming those MRES, another biological clock starts ticking, one the Air Force really didn't want to discuss during recruitment briefings. Let's talk about what happens when nature calls at 50,000 feet over hostile territory. The B-2 has no bathroom, not in the traditional sense. What it has is a relief system, military euphemism for the most undignified aspect of ultra-long-range stealth missions. Option 1, piddle packs, disposable plastic bags with absorbent chemicals that solidify liquid waste. The same technology used by commercial pilots and ground troops. Effective, portable, and absolutely miserable to use in a cramped cockpit while wearing flight suits and harnesses. The procedure requires unfastening your 5-point restraint system, maneuvering in the 18 inches between your seat and the instrument panel, maintaining visual contact with your displays, and hoping the autopilot handles the aircraft correctly while you're vulnerable. Oh, and your mission commander is 3 feet away, in a space with no privacy curtain, no partition, nothing. Option 2, relief tube. A funnel connected to a tube that vents outside the aircraft. Standard equipment on military aircraft for 70 years. Simple, effective, and completely useless for half the physiological needs humans experience. The Air Force discovered this limitation the hard way during early B-2 operations, when mission planners, mostly male, mostly focused on engineering, didn't fully consider the implications of 30-hour missions. The other biological need? No solution. B-2 crews adapted using what military personnel call operational workarounds: plastic bags, careful timing, and dietary modifications that would horrify nutritionists. Some crews fast for 12 hours before departure. Others consume binding agents that slow digestion. The most experienced pilots develop personal protocols through trial and error, strategies they share quietly in crew rooms but never appear in official documentation, because the Air Force doesn't want to discuss this reality. Every ultra-long-range mission includes a moment when a crew member must choose between mission focus and biological urgency. 2003, 36 hours over Iraq. A mission commander experienced severe intestinal distress at hour 22, likely from contaminated MRE components combined with dehydration and stress. The pilot maintained aircraft control while his partner dealt with a medical emergency in a space the size of a compact car's front seats. They completed the mission, delivered their ordnance on target, returned safely to Whiteman Air Force Base. The incident never appeared in official mission reports, but medical protocols changed overnight. New guidelines mandated pre-mission dietary restrictions, prohibited certain MRE varieties known to cause digestive issues, required crews to log water intake and biological functions during flight, data that helped optimize future mission planning. But here's the brutal truth no recruiter mentions. When you're piloting a B-2 Spirit over the South China Sea, 12 hours from the nearest friendly runway, monitoring Chinese air defenses that would love to down an American stealth bomber, your body doesn't care about geopolitics. The urgency builds gradually. Hour 15, manageable. Hour 18, uncomfortable. Hour 22, your entire focus narrows to the biological demand your brain can no longer ignore. And you're faced with a choice. Risk leaving your seat while sophisticated enemy radar systems probe for exactly the kind of flight anomaly that happens when autopilot handles the aircraft without human supervision, or push through the pain, compromise your judgment, and hope nothing critical happens in the next 2 hours while your concentration deteriorates. Mission commanders describe it as the loneliest decision in military aviation because, unlike engine failure or weapon system malfunction, problems with procedures and protocols, this is your body betraying you in the middle of a strategic operation, your weakness, your vulnerability. One B-2 pilot admitted, "Hour 25, I wasn't worried about Chinese fighters. I was worried about whether I could hold out until we cleared their airspace." But the bathroom crisis is just one aspect of the larger endurance challenge, because as missions stretch past 20 hours, a more insidious enemy emerges, one that no amount of training can fully overcome. What happens when your brain starts failing at hour 28? Hour 20, your body begins shutting down. The B-2 cockpit seats recline 15 degrees, barely enough to shift weight off your spine, nowhere near enough for actual rest. You and your mission commander establish a rotation. One flies while the other attempts sleep in a position that would be torture in any other context. Except sleep doesn't come. The cockpit lighting, carefully calibrated to preserve night vision, creates a perpetual twilight that confuses circadian rhythms. The constant low-frequency vibration from engines, normally imperceptible, becomes a sensory assault your brain can't filter out. The knowledge that you're responsible for a $2 billion weapon system prevents the mental surrender that sleep requires. So you lie there, strapped into a barely reclined seat, eyes closed, mind racing through mission calculations while your partner monitors systems 3 feet away. 30-minute rest periods feel like 3 minutes. You emerge more exhausted than before, muscles cramped from immobility, neck stiff from the inadequate seat angle, vision blurry from dry cabin air. Then you take the controls and your partner attempts the same futile rest. By hour 22, both crew members are operating in what sleep researchers call severe impairment, cognitive function equivalent to having a blood alcohol content of 0.10, legally drunk, reaction times delayed, decision-making compromised, spatial awareness deteriorating. But you're piloting a stealth bomber through contested airspace where one navigation error could trigger an international incident. The Air Force solution? Stimulants. Dextroamphetamine tablets, military-issue Go pills, prescribed and monitored to maintain alertness during extended operations. The same medications fighter pilots use during combat missions, adapted for the unique demands of ultra-long-range bombing. Take one at hour 18, another at hour 24 if the mission extends. Medical officers calculate dosages to maximize alertness while minimizing side effects. But stimulants can't replace sleep. They mask fatigue, delay collapse, Keep your eyes open and your hands responsive. They don't restore judgment, creativity, or the subtle situational awareness that separates excellent pilots from adequate ones. Hour 28. Hallucinations begin. Shadows move at the edge of vision. Instruments display readings that don't match reality. Your brain filling gaps with false information. Radio calls from controllers that never transmitted. Threat warnings that don't exist. You learn to verify everything twice. Trust your partner's observations over your own. Follow checklists with obsessive precision because your intuition has become unreliable. One B-2 mission commander described the experience. Hour 30. I saw enemy fighters on radar that weren't there. I knew they weren't there. Intellectually, I understood my brain was failing, but the image was so convincing I had to ask my pilot to confirm. That's when you realize you're operating beyond human limits. The worst part, you can't admit weakness. Not to your partner. They're struggling through the same cognitive deterioration. Not to command. Mission abort means explaining why a billion-dollar sortie failed because you couldn't handle the endurance challenge. So you push through. Monitor each other for signs of serious impairment. Execute the mission despite growing evidence that your brain has left the cockpit while your body remains strapped in. Hour 28 over the Pacific. The mission commander develops severe muscle cramps, circulation cut off from extended immobility. His right leg goes numb. Divert to Guam. Compromise the stealth mission profile by revealing your position to Chinese surveillance, or push through 2 more hours and risk permanent nerve damage. 60 seconds to decide. The call is his. Touchdown. 33 hours after departure, the B-2 Spirit rolls onto Whiteman AFB runway. Emergency crews stand ready. Medical personnel trained to handle the specific trauma of ultra-long duration flight. Both crew members need assistance exiting the aircraft. Legs refuse to support body weight after 33 hours of near immobility. Dehydration has reduced blood volume, making standing dangerous. Cognitive function so impaired that ground crews handle post-flight procedures the pilots normally execute. Medical evaluation is mandatory. Blood tests reveal electrolyte imbalances. Physical examination documents muscle atrophy and circulation issues. Psychological assessment checks for decision-making impairment that might persist beyond landing. Full recovery takes 72 hours minimum. Some crews report lingering effects, disrupted sleep patterns, digestive problems, muscle pain, for weeks after extreme duration missions. But the debrief reveals the mission succeeded, ordnance on target, stealth profile maintained, strategic objectives achieved, and most importantly, lessons learned that would reshape how the Air Force approaches ultra-long-range operations. The improvements came fast. New electrolyte formulations specifically designed for extended flight operations, better absorption, fewer digestive side effects, optimized mineral ratios to prevent cramping. Revised MRE menus, eliminating items that caused problems at altitude, lower sodium content to reduce water requirements, easily digestible proteins to minimize gastrointestinal issues. Enhanced relief systems still not comfortable but significantly improved over the original piddle-pack-only approach. Mandatory pre-mission hydration protocols with medical monitoring. Strict dietary restrictions 72 hours before departure. Physical conditioning programs focused on circulation and muscle endurance during immobility. But the most important change was psychological. The Air Force stopped pretending these missions were routine. Crews received recognition for enduring conditions that push human limits. Medical support improved, recovery time extended. The stigma of discussing biological challenges disappeared as commanders acknowledged the reality. Because here's what those early B-2 missions proved. The crew's endurance isn't a comfort issue, it's a strategic weapons system. When adversaries are 7,000 miles away and your bomber can't refuel over hostile territory without compromising stealth, the pilot's ability to function for 30-plus hours determines whether the mission succeeds. Every 30-hour B-2 mission sends a message adversaries can't ignore. American air power reaches anywhere, anytime without warning. No forward bases required, no diplomatic clearances needed, no advance warning. Just 2 pilots willing to endure conditions that would break most people. Cold MRES, chemical toilets, sleep deprivation, and the crushing responsibility of a $2 billion stealth aircraft carrying precision weapons. The survival challenge isn't a design flaw, it's a strategic choice. The discomfort, the biological struggles, the cognitive strain, all acceptable costs for the capability to strike any target on Earth while remaining invisible. Because when those crew members finally land after 33 hours, they've proven something more valuable than stealth technology. American Resolve has no range limit. Want to see what happens when a B-2 crew faces mechanical failure at hour 25 with no divert options and fuel running critical? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Could you survive 30 hours in that cockpit?